Greetings, this is your nonfiction signpost review lesson. Last year you were exposed, I know you were in 7th grade, to both the fiction and the nonfiction signposts. Think about stop signs, caution signs, slow down signs, traffic lights. They are those moments in a text where you are supposed to stop and reflect and question. If you don't naturally stop, this is what the lesson's for, to teach you how to do that. I just went to Google Classroom and opened up this graphic, this PDF. There are 5 types of nonfiction signposts, since we're concentrating on nonfiction today, which means true. Number 1, contrast and contradiction. If something goes against everything you have based your foundation of life on, that's a contrast. Means something different, or a contradiction. It goes against your current life view. So when you come to that kind of writing, you're going to stop and wonder, what does this make me wonder about? All right. How does it challenge you? Number 2, numbers and stats. They are probably visibly the easiest to find because you're looking for numbers. Numbers may be 98 people out of 100, 4 out of 5 dentists agree this is the best toothpaste. So when you see those numbers and stats, you're going to ask yourself, why? Why did the author choose, of all the research out there, why did the author choose to put this information in the article? The author is obviously not going to put stats in his or her article that goes against the thesis or point or claim. You want to find evidence that goes with the point you're trying to make. I'm thinking back last year to a Why Should I Care Day that we asked students to do this. And I can't remember the article, but it had, I challenged students to think, why did the author say 95% of something instead of 2%. Obviously, 95% goes with your argument and not the opposite. Okay, so look for those numbers and stats and stop and think about the why. Not so much in 8th grade. I found a number, but why? So this year we're going to concentrate on your reflection and your reaction and your thought to these signposts instead of the signposts themselves. So we're trying to extend it and dig a little deeper. Number 3, absolute, meaning all in, not wishy-washy, or extreme language, not curse words, not inappropriate language, but very tone-filled, no room for debate kinds of words. So absolute, all, none. Okay, that's very direct. Everyone or no one. Or extreme language could be, we read an article later this year in which teenagers trashed an NFL player's house in New York. It was one of his second residences, and he watched them trash the house from his vacation home in Florida. And long story short, he had camera footage of them destroying his house, and he said, I won't press charges unless you come back and make right, do good, and clean up my house. Instead, the parents got mad. Like, how dare you make my child who destroyed your house come clean it up? So instead of being thankful, the parents had like an additional hissy fit. So someone wrote an article about these parents and how awful they thought they were. And the author used words like, your children are derelicts. Derelicts is a very extreme word for a bad person. Or what else did it say? I think derelict is the strongest word I come back to throughout the year. So great, you found extreme or absolute language, but why? Why did the author use this language? Well, if you're using derelict, you have no respect for that person or party that you're calling a derelict. It's very tone-filled. Number 4, quoted words, probably the second easiest to spot because you're obviously looking for quotation marks. But you don't want to just say, boom, 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 here's a quote. Find the quote that really adds meaning to the article and ask yourself, Why was this person quoted and what did the quote add? We don't want you to treat this anytime we do signposts as a scavenger hunt. Great, you found them, but stop and have that meaningful, pregnant pause and think about why. What is this adding to the article? Why would the author use it? And number 5, word gaps. I just used the word a pregnant pause. If you went, huh, for a second, things that make you go, and you never heard the word pregnant outside of someone carrying a child until they give birth, that's an example of a word gap. I used a word in a different context, in a different way. We know the word bank. I can bank a shot in basketball. I can go to the bank and deposit money. I can sit in the on the river bank and have a picnic. So look for those words that are used in different ways, and it's really awesome when a word is used in a way that stops you, like that pregnant pause example. Pregnant, huh? I never heard that word used like that before. And then stop and reflect on why. Why did the author do that? Okay, so the Screencastify video is now going to boogie on over to our article for today. I realize in a perfect world, I would want you live doing this with me on some kind of Zoom or Google Hangout. But we know there can be glitches, and I don't want you to miss anything with my internet going in and out. Excuse me. Got that first week of school teacher voice. I need a cup of honey tea. So this article is from Scholastic Magazine. Some of your teachers gave them out to you throughout the years. So this is from that, Scholastic Scope. This is from New York Times, the student edition. So you should feel very fancy right now. We're reading the New York Times. We are going to read this together, and we're going to stop at each one of the signposts, but I'm not going to tell you what kind of signpost it is. All right, so you can watch this video like I told you to, and then you're going to go back into Google Classroom, open up the article. It probably would be a great idea if you put it next to the blank doc, so you have them next to each other. I'm giving you the signpost. You're going to label it. Is it quoted words? Is it number and stats? And then you're going to stop and have that reflective moment. Why did the author use it? What does it add to the article? How does it strengthen it? All right, so let's get started. This is called F in grammar. Maybe it's your phone's fault. If you paused with F in grammar, is Mrs. Paterna saying something inappropriate? No, it's a pun. It's talking about the letter grade. Texting and tweeting are getting teens in trouble when they have to write in the real world. Okay, if you never capitalize the letter I or you spell too wrong, bad practice makes bad. Okay, so perfect practice makes perfect. So don't fall into those bad habits. Okay, always look at everything. If they have a comic, look at it. Make meaning out of it. I see, no A, no A, no O. Night is spelled not like N-I-G-H-T, just like drive-thrus. They spell it like that instead of this way. So just take note of things. And Snoopy is saying stupid, Twitter. Think about the message. Writes like that on Twitter. Maybe omitting these vowels to get under the 40 character limit. And now when he's typing a paper for school, those bad habits seep through the cracks. All right, so let's put on our nonfiction signpost glasses. We're looking for quoted words, numbers and stats, contrasts and contradictions, absolute or extreme language. All right, I think I missed one. Let's get started. I saw your notice for an office manager the woman in her 20s had written. The very position that I believe I could fill. Well, I have a background in education and a bachelor's degree in kinesiology. When Gina Babineau, who works at the YMCA of Greater Houston, read the woman's job application, she knew she wouldn't be calling her in for an interview. So go back, think. What's wrong with what was written? In the more than 2,000 applications submitted by young people this past summer, Babineau encountered mountains of misspellings, missing punctuation, spacing mistakes, and abbreviations that are fine in text messages, but not in formal writing. So just because I'm a lit teacher, I'm going to point out there was a lot of m's. That's called alliteration. But, anytime you see the word but, that's going to show a shift, a contrast, how something's different. To her, these kinds of errors show laziness and lack of care. Look at those L's. Nice, very stylistic. If she finds them on a resume or cover letter, she tosses the application aside and moves on to other candidates. So all those things teachers are telling you, proofread, yeah, it matters in the real world. If you want the job, you need to make sure that everything is done properly, she says. So you see in number 1, that's our first stopping point. I'm highlighting it. That is going to be your first signpost. That is on your Google Doc. So you're going to go back later and think, why did the author, Alessandra Potenza, include that quote? What does it add to the point of the article? The point of the article already seems like grammar and mechanics count. You want a job? You want money? You want to pay the bills? They count. I'm thinking that quote supports that. Hopefully you agree. Let's keep moving. Babineau isn't the only one who doesn't like what she's reading. English teachers, college admission officers, and employers are all finding a lot more grammar and writing mistakes than they used to. The problem seems to be increasing in the age of texting, tweeting, and Facebook. And to make this relevant, because this is from 2013, think about all the other apps that are watering down the quality of your writing. You have your Instagram, your Snapchat, and I won't embarrass myself thinking of other ones. So what have you. Oh, I see a quoted word, but we already had one on the other page. But still, point it out. We're not going to hold ourselves to only finding 5. If you are constantly using a particular slang term or a particular shortcut or abbreviation, says Amanda Lenhart of the Pew Internet and American Life Project in Washington, D.C., it may not be surprising that ends up creeping into your schoolwork. A 2008 study, I'm thinking numbers and stats are about to follow, of teenage grammar use in the digital age found that 64%, I was right, of teenagers used informal, meaning not professional, writing styles typical of electronic communication in their schoolwork. 50% used informal capitalization, 38% used abbreviations like LOL, and 25% used emoticons. And that was 5 years ago. Since then, texting has exploded with young people leading the way. So I'm wondering, that I would put in my reflection, how has it even gotten worse since 2013? That was 7 years ago. So I'm sure it's incrementally worse. Spell checks perils. That's even an extreme word. I didn't number it, but it is. So I'm going to label it. Why not? Teachers say the informal language of texting is showing up more and more in class. IMing, okay, that's instant messaging. That's an AOL thing. I had that in 2001 in college, so that's a little dated. Texting language, pretty much, has become part of what students think is the standard vocabulary, says Kara Shimabukuro, an English teacher at Manteo High School in Manteo, North Carolina. Of course, that's a quoted word again. Where's that other quote? She says words at the beginning of sentences and personal names are rarely capitalized. Numbers are used instead of letters, and the letter U often substitutes for you. Okay? And I just want to stop and clarify. I guess I gave number 3 away when you label it. I don't want you to look at the quote here. I want you to look at this extreme word. Look it up. What does that mean? Spell check perils? No, do they go together? Why is the author using that word? So number 3 is the extreme word, not the quote. In college admissions offices, a pattern of mistakes on applications can make a school think twice about making an offer. So not only can you not get a job, you might not get into college, or the college of your choice at least. Kelly Walter, the admissions director at Boston University, once read an application referencing 3 different colleges within a few paragraphs: Boston U, Boston College, and Villanova. The student had cut and pasted, from several applications and hadn't bothered to proofread. Don't do that in a couple years. Patrick Herring, the admissions director at the University of Florida, blames technology not only for proofreading blunders. Spell check can give writers a false sense that all their mistakes will be caught, but also for fostering a lax attitude about writing. So that word made me stop and think, what does a lax attitude mean? I saw dramatic dashes, so I thought that was worth noting. That's very crafty and stylish. What would Chaucer say? I think a natural outgrowth of those kinds of instant communications is the impatience, the lack of care, the inattention to detail, he says. What would Chaucer say? Chaucer. That is medieval literature. I don't think that's spelled right. Famous writer. Some language experts point out that English is always evolving. Social media's influence, they say, is only the latest wrinkle. I like that, wrinkle. Ever since the days of Chaucer, people have been complaining that the language was going down the tubes. That, English isn't what it was, it's been corrupted, says Patricia O'Connor, a blogger at Grammarphobia. So yet another quote. And the truth is, English is a living language. O'Connor argues that evolving grammar is perfectly natural and that teenagers don't make mistakes because of technology. The mistake is just more visible. So here's a hint when you do number 4. It's not a quote. So it's not a quote. What could it be? If you're really confused by this, think of the 5 and go back and spread them out. Though teenagers seem to know that social media is exerting too much influence on their writing, they also think that technology has had some positive effects. So this is a shift because we heard so far, proofreader, you won't get a job. Proofreader, you won't get into college. Number 3, teenagers have always made mistakes. It's just more noticeable. And now it's saying there could be some positive effects. So let's hear them. Now there are more ways to communicate, says Catherine Brzezinski, 17, a senior at Lake Brantley High School in Altamont Springs, Florida. Another quote, even though we're not using it, still stop and think. Texting, emailing and blogging and social networking are all powered by the written word, but many young people don't seem to know when they need to turn to Webster's, that's a dictionary that is, for help. See the box. So then you need to go back. Part of nonfiction, people skip over the pictures. Nonfiction has comics. It has a title with a subheading, an author. It has these sidebars. Read them. And even though I told you to go to them now, I'm going to keep flowing. We'll come back to it at the end. Shimon Bukharo, the English teacher, doesn't see technology as the enemy. On the contrary, so there's a shift. That tells me I'm about to hear a good thing. She texts with her students on weekends, and when she grades papers, she cares more about ideas and critical thinking than about grammar. I don't know about you guys. As a teacher, I don't agree with that. I think you would think it's creepy that I'm texting you on weekends. And I do care about your ideas, but I think at some point, once they're out, we do need to clean up that muddy water. So I could write about that this goes against what I'm thinking. You're not going to go from an A paper to an F because you had spelling and grammar issues, and that is true. It's not going to bring you down that much. It might bring you from what could be an A to a low B or a high C, but you're not going to fail. She says, unless the mistakes make understanding the text difficult. That's true. If we can't get through your paper because we're thinking, I don't even know what this says, it is going to be a maybe an F. Others may not be as forgiving. College admissions officers and employers say teens should learn to use standard English when writing in class or filling out college or job applications. As O'Connor, the blogger, points out, there's one thing that never changes about language. People are going to judge you by what you write. So this is going to be our last signpost that I want you to stop and label which one of the 5 is it. The tricky thing is going to be quotes are not necessarily being used as quotes, so that might throw you off, but I have faith in you, you're going to get through it. Stop and reflect on the last one. So going back, you're going to open up that Google Doc. That's number 1, and I'll have them typed in the Google Doc. 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we use each one of our 5 nonfiction signposts one time. Okay, and I skipped this, so let's give it some love. Number 1, spell check. Proofread twice. 2, no emoticons. No text talk. Spell out your words. And it takes time. And hello, lady. Bonus, read a lot. I already preached to you about that on Wednesday. It's true. It's in more than one place. I wasn't lying. Believe me. All right, go to your Google Doc, open it up, and start labeling and reflecting on your signposts. I'm just trying to stop the video.